fate will be decided tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully they need, I mean, I don't know. I feel like they should have to need, they should have to need.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard appears to be on a fast track back to prison, and it's all because she let her brief taste of internet fame go to her head. It seems that after gaining some public attention, she started to believe she was free from the constraints of her parole, acting as if she was no longer bound by the conditions that kept her out of prison. This reckless behavior didn't go unnoticed, and the consequences have been swift and severe. Gypsy has just received a harsh reminder that she is far from being a free citizen. She's still very much under the watchful eye of the law, and her recent actions have only tightened the leash she's on. This situation is spiraling out of control, and it's become a tangled mess that needs to be unraveled. The fact that Gypsy, who once captured the public's sympathy, is now at risk of being sent back to prison is shocking. It raises so many questions about her state of mind, the influence of her sudden fame, and whether she truly understood the gravity of her parole conditions. This isn't just a simple case of breaking the rules, it's a dramatic fall from grace that's playing out in real time. And we need to dive into the details of how things got to this point.
Looks like Gypsy Rose Blanchard is headed back to jail. It is being reported that Gypsy Rose Blanchard violated her parole and is going to be put back in prison.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard hasn't had a moment of peace since her release from prison. After spending years behind bars, she's only been out for a little over 6 months, but it feels like she's been trying to cram a lifetime's worth of experiences into that short time. It's as if she's trying to make up for all the time she lost while incarcerated. Her post-prison life has been a whirlwind of scandals, controversial interviews, and non-stop drama. From a marriage that barely lasted long enough to sign the papers to cosmetic procedures and a pregnancy that has everyone talking, Gypsy's life has been nothing short of chaotic. To add to the turmoil, she's dealing with an ex-husband who can't seem to keep quiet, a messy divorce that's playing out in the public eye, and a reality show that's turning her life into even more of a spectacle. But as wild as all of that sounds, none of it compares to the latest bombshell. Gypsy is now at serious risk of being sent back to prison. Why? Because she's been breaking the simple rules of her parole, seemingly unaware that being a public figure or an up-and-coming influencer doesn't exempt her from the law. Before diving into the mess she's gotten herself into, let's take a step back and consider how Gypsy ended up in this situation. From the moment she was released, people became fascinated with her story. Unfortunately, many of those who flocked to her weren't interested in her well-being. They saw her as a ticket to views, a way to capitalize on her notoriety. Gypsy might not fully realize it, but she's been surrounded by people who are both exploiting her and waiting for her to fail. The obsession with her life has reached cult-like levels, with creators dissecting her every move, even speculating wildly about her pregnancy and who the father might be. It's insane, but it's not surprising in today's social media-obsessed world. That's not to say Gypsy doesn't have genuine fans. Some people do care about her, but the problem is that she's been blinded by false friendships. Coming straight out of prison, she didn't have the tools to distinguish between true friends and those who just wanted to use her. This ignorance has cost her dearly. Gypsy's freedom depends on her strictly adhering to her parole conditions, which include some tough rules like not getting a job until she's fully adjusted to life outside prison and avoiding contact with anyone still incarcerated. But despite these clear guidelines, Gypsy has been in regular communication with someone who's still locked up, a friend named Millie. Their conversations were leaked, showing that Gypsy was well aware of the consequences of her actions. She even acknowledged the risk, saying she'd been warned by her parole officer that if she continued taking calls from prison, she'd be sent back. Yet she didn't stop, and now she's in serious trouble. What makes this even more concerning is the betrayal that appears to be happening within her own circle. Word is that Gypsy has been using her boyfriend Ken's phone to contact her ex-inmate friends, and now people are wondering if Ken might be the one who leaked these incriminating messages. This wouldn't be the first time someone close to her has done her dirty. Recently, her friend Bree, who is also a TikToker and creator, was on TikTok Live while on the phone with Gypsy. During their conversation, they talked about Gypsy's parole violations and the trouble she's in with her parole officer. Gypsy had no idea that Bree was broadcasting their conversation to the world, and to make matters worse, Bree seemed to be coaching her on how to lie to her probation officer. It's a tragic situation, really. Gypsy Rose, who once seemed like she might finally have a chance at a normal life, is now spiraling out of control, caught in a web of deceit, betrayal, and the relentless pressure of being in the public eye. If she doesn't find a way to course correct, she could very well end up right back where she started, behind bars. And that's a fate that nobody wants for her, least of all those who truly care about her well-being. That's Bri blatantly instructing Gypsy to deny everything, telling her to claim that her phone was hacked or that the messages were doctored. Bri even suggests Gypsy could argue that the messages came from a fake account or one of those spoofing apps. Gypsy, seemingly resigned to her fate, casually remarks, "Oh well, I guess my fate will be determined tomorrow," as if the gravity of the situation hasn't quite hit her yet. Then, in a move that leaves you shaking your head, Bri says, "Thank God I just started this YouTube vlog because I'm like on the phone with your life, just lie." This was Bri supposedly realizing she'd been live streaming the entire conversation. She claimed she forgot to end the live, meaning everything they discussed was broadcast. But let's be real, who's buying that? The idea that this was an accident is as believable as pigs flying.
We decided tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully they need, I don't know, I feel like they should have to need, they should have to need proof. Like, they can't just use a text. I feel like not even text message. They should have been, like, I don't know, somebody could have got hold of your phone, like, I don't know, something. Like, because people can use, there's like all kind of crazy phone apps and everything, girl.
That's Bri literally telling Gypsy to deny sending those messages.
During the conversation, Bri even covered her camera, making the whole situation even more suspicious. After practically setting Gypsy up for a fall, Bri acted shocked that the live stream hadn't ended. But people quickly saw through Bri's act, and her response only confirmed their suspicions. She tried to play it off, saying that Gypsy wasn't mad at her and that her parole officer didn't care about the leaked information. This response is concerning because it hints at something much darker. If it turns out that Gypsy's parole officer has been covering for her, things could get very messy. And if this is true, it raises the question, what else has been swept under the rug? With so-called friends like Bri, who needs enemies? Let's not sugarcoat it, Bri is no stranger to going live, and she knows exactly how it works. The idea that she accidentally left the live on without realizing it is about as believable as the sky turning green. Bri is just one of the many people around Gypsy who seem to be using her for drama and gossip, even if it means disclosing information that could send Gypsy back to prison. But what's truly disturbing is that Gypsy seems to be feeding off the drama and attention. It's almost like she's embraced this chaotic lifestyle, perhaps seeing it as a path to becoming the influencer she once talked about. Unfortunately, no one is guiding her on where to draw the line, and if she continues down this path, her case could be reviewed, and she might end up serving more time, potentially a lot more. This recent parole violation isn't just an isolated incident, it's part of a troubling pattern that has been unfolding ever since Gypsy Rose Blanchard re-entered the world outside prison walls. It's clear that she's been making choices that put her freedom at risk, and what's worse, these decisions seem to be driven by a toxic environment filled with people who don't have her best interests at heart. Gypsy has allowed those around her to leak deeply personal information, from her pregnancy tests to her medical records and now private messages that could have severe consequences for her future. All of this exposure has only brought negative attention her way, making one wonder what exactly is she trying to achieve. It's understandable why her parole officer advised her to step away from social media. After all, her sudden surge in fame has come with a double-edged sword. While it's given her a platform, it has also exposed her to relentless scrutiny and toxic influences. Yet, it seems that Gypsy, intoxicated by the allure of fame and the attention it brings, is willing to risk everything, even her hard-earned freedom, rather than fade into obscurity. The irony here is tragic. After fighting so hard to escape a life of imprisonment, she now seems to be voluntarily walking back into a cage, this time, one of her own making. Gypsy desperately needs to take a step back and reevaluate her life, especially when it comes to the company she keeps. Her inner circle is alarmingly toxic, so much so that people who once might have judged her ex-husband, Ryan, are now starting to see him in a different light. Despite everything that transpired between them, Ryan has chosen not to weaponize what he knows about Gypsy, even though he could easily say or do something that would send her spiraling back into legal trouble. Yes, he's been vocal about their past, but unlike others like Bri, he hasn't crossed the line into betrayal. Perhaps, deep down, Ryan still cares for Gypsy in a way that goes beyond their tumultuous history. In retrospect, it's clear that Gypsy's personal life was far more private when she was with Ryan. Back then, She wasn't surrounded by opportunists looking to exploit her every misstep for a few likes or views. But now it seems like Gypsy has developed a taste for the chaos that comes with living under a constant spotlight. Peace, it seems, isn't something she values, or perhaps it's something she doesn't know how to embrace after a lifetime of turmoil. The public, too, is growing weary of Gypsy's endless cycle of drama. The overwhelming sympathy she once garnered during her imprisonment and subsequent release is beginning to fade. Where people once saw a victim who had been horrifically wronged, they now see someone who seems to be clinging to any controversy that keeps her in the headlines. If Gypsy doesn't face serious consequences for her actions soon, she might start to feel even more emboldened to act recklessly, under the mistaken belief that she's untouchable. This sense of entitlement could lead her down a path where the consequences are far graver than anything she's faced before. In my opinion, if this were anyone else, they'd likely have been sent straight back to prison for these parole violations. It's hard not to wonder if Gypsy's parole officer is turning a blind eye, or even complicit in some way. The whole situation raises uncomfortable questions about how justice is being administered in her case. With everything that's come to light, it might be time for Gypsy to face the consequences again. The sad reality is that she's playing a dangerous game and the odds are not in her favor. So what's next for Gypsy Rose? Is she being set up by her so-called friends, or is she actively participating in digging herself deeper into trouble? The lines between victim and instigator are becoming increasingly blurred. One thing is clear, though: Gypsy needs to make some hard choices, and she needs to make them fast before it's too late. That's the latest update on the ever-controversial Gypsy Rose. What do you all think? Is she a victim of her circumstances, or is she bringing this on herself? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit those notification buttons to stay updated on all the latest tea from your favorite celebrities and influencers.